Thank you, Brian, and thank you to everybody that has joined us this afternoon, especially if you are in the southeast area and just weathered that storm. Um, as Brian mentioned, we want to be interactive. If you guys are interested, if you all are interested, excuse me, um, I will go through the slides, give you an overview of Intune, Autopilot, how it can be a benefit to your organization. Happy to answer any questions you may have either on the slide or at the end of the presentation. Um, Most of you have probably heard Microsoft has a product called Intune. Intune, the primary objective is to provide you a way to manage your devices from a cloud perspective. Essentially, everything that you have traditionally done in Active Directory from a device configuration and management perspective, you can accomplish inside of Intune. So let's talk about why managing your devices matters. Traditional management presents quite a few problems, especially in today's world of remote work. You have a bunch of devices that are no longer just in the office environment. They are at users' homes, they are at Starbucks, they are traveling across the world, and they all still need to work. And you still need to manage them, make sure they're secured, make sure they're functional. So Intune provides that functionality. As I mentioned previously, it is a cloud-based device management platform. It solves a lot of the challenges associated with traditional device development, deployment, and management. It provides you a scalable solution for device management. And what I mean by that is once you have your desired controls in place, as long as you have licensing, you can theoretically continue to onboard devices into Intune. It can manage a variety of devices across a variety of operating systems, phones, tablets, workstations, servers, etc. It's continuously evolving to support future technologies, not only in the Microsoft ecosystem, but also a lot of the major third parties that you work with. Additionally, you can do custom development to put packages, applications, and workloads inside of the Intune environment. And then on top of Intune, Microsoft offers a feature called Autopilot that we will get to in further slides. Essentially, this streamlines the deployment of your Intune devices. Touch briefly on this. Microsoft Intune is a cloud-based endpoint management solution. The biggest takeaway from a device management perspective is Microsoft has gone through great lengths to include the entire settings catalog for the Windows operating system inside of Intune. You can use templates for device configuration, but also if you have one specific setting that you are looking for that you want to deploy across all of your devices, you can go find that one setting and turn it on. Some of the key features for Intune include device management. So, as previously mentioned, across the operating system landscape, you can manage iOS devices, Mac OS devices. You can manage Windows devices, obviously. It provides a platform to holistically gather all of the devices across your environment and manage them in one spot. You have the application management. So outside of the devices, ultimately our goal is to protect the organization's data, right? And so the application management provides a way for you to govern the application associated with the data associated with the applications in your environment and still have those protections available even when you don't necessarily have a full device management deployment. Once you have your devices onboarded, you can apply compliance policies and conditional access policies to these devices to help protect your environment and govern access to certain resources. This is kind of the ultimate maturity in Intune. And what I mean by that is, as an organization, I'm going to give you a simple example. As an organization, let's say I want my compliance status to be the device has a password to unlock it. That's the only thing I care about. I can configure a compliance policy on all of these Intune enrolled devices to check to see if that password policy is in place and it's needed to unlock the device. And then I can use a conditional access policy to evaluate the state of that device, whether or not it's compliant, and grant or deny access to 365 resources however I see fit in my organization. On top of that, Intune does integrate with all of the native 365 resources. It hooks very seamlessly into Defender for Endpoint. It also works into the Defender for Management. So you really get a full integration across the 365 environment. It does provide that unified endpoint management platform across Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, etc. It allows you to centralize app management and deployment. There is a catalog of pre-built applications inside of Intune that you can choose to deploy and choose how to deploy to your users. You can also automate the uninstallation of those applications as well. In addition to the pre-built catalog, you actually have the ability to convert applications to what are called Intune packages to upload them as an Intune application, right? And then you can deploy those to your devices as well. So even if something is not in the pre-built catalog, you can do a little development and get that application deployed to your devices. It provides a lot of flexibility for your users, right? They get the configurations and they get the applications they need no matter where they are at. It provides flexibility for your security. You are now able to secure those devices with configuration profiles, compliance profiles, state readiness, etc., no matter where they're at. If they're sitting at Starbucks, if they're flying across the world, etc. Ultimately, the biggest goal is data protection, right? So you can leverage Intune and data loss prevention inside of 365 to conduct data loss prevention on your endpoints as well. So in addition with the compliance state policies and the conditional access policies, you can implement data loss prevention policies on those devices. When you hook Intune into Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Vulnerability Management, you also get that real-time activity and security monitoring to monitor security status so you can take action on your exposed devices immediately. Now, I'm going to pause there for a minute because we will switch to Autopilot. Does anybody have any questions on Intune General? All right. So, Autopilot. When you have Intune deployed, and it doesn't matter. Oh, got one. Does anything change with Intune when using GCC High? So, not really. The GCC High tenant and environment is separate from the backend workspace that they use for Intune. The backend workspace that they use for Intune is general for everybody that uses Intune. What changes is your development of the security baselines, the configuration profiles, and those items. Any others? Yes. So the question is, if we deploy Intune in our commercial cloud and then move to GCC High, do you have to re-image the phones and laptops, or how does that migration happen? Great question. So unfortunately, there is no direct migration path between the two. So you would have to essentially redeploy Intune once you've made that move and associate it with that tenant. All right, pause for just another second. Yeah, so I don't want to get into too much of the technical weeds here. So the question is about redeployment, reimaging the system, or just install agent and reinstall. So Microsoft is funny about redeployment of Intune on a machine that has already been enrolled in Intune. In some cases, the unenrollment, the DS reg command that you run, will handle the unenrollment entirely. In most cases, from my experience, that is not the case. And in that case, Microsoft recommends reimaging the system entirely, which ends up being a bunch of hassle, after you've already tried to troubleshoot for an hour. Our general method for a device that has already been enrolled in one Intune tenant and needs to be enrolled in another, or if the device has disconnected from the tenant and none of the commands are running, are reconnecting it, then generally, yes, we're going to reimage the device just because at that point it's not worth the time to fight with it.
Any other questions on the Intune side before Chris shifts over to Autopilot, guys?
All right. Appreciate the questions. Okay, so Autopilot. Autopilot is a beautiful thing to have as an IT manager, regardless of the state of your Intune deployment. And what I mean by that is, as you go through your refresh cycles, as you onboard new employees with new devices, you can establish a direct relationship with your vendor and essentially give them a hookup into your 365 environment. They are able to provision new purchases with your Intune deployment ready to go. They direct ship that device to your user. Your user powers the device on, logs in with their 365 credentials, and they are up and running. It does require a little front end configuration. There is some business relationship items that you need to figure out with the vendor. But it is definitely valuable to have. It is definitely something that we run internally anytime that we make new purchases. The biggest features for this, no need for IT to manually set up the device. It is going to come pre-hooked into your Intune, pre-configured for what it needs to do. As I mentioned, user needs to power it up, log into it, and it'll start running. There's probably a handful of processes that will need to run once the user logs in. The reason for that is when the vendor provisions it, they provision it based on essentially an image that you've given them or you've authorized them to use. When your user gets it, each user is going to have their own groups assigned with their own applications, their own permissions, et cetera, et cetera. And so once your user logs in, then that starts their individual provisioning process, but they're still able to use the machine, they're still able to function and get all of those things going. Autopilot reduces the time and cost associated with the device deployment. Intune does as well to an extent, right? Because you've got it deployed, you've got it scoped. Your users log in, and they once they're enrolled into Intune, everything starts deploying and configuring. Autopilot even more so as the device is coming directly from the vendor in that state. You can continuously monitor not only access, but the compliance of the device state to ensure that you're meeting all of your specific company standards based on, the regulatory obligations and data privacy obligations you may have. And the Autopilot does hook up directly into Intune, so it's really an add-on functionality for Intune that is good to facilitate user onboarding, new device onboarding, etc. Any questions on Autopilot? All right. So the combination of two. So Intune, oh, is Autopilot is not available in GCCI. They are working on it. but that's all I've gotten out of Microsoft. So the question was, is Autopilot available in GCC High? And to my knowledge, that is not the case at the moment. All right, how Intune and Autopilot work together. So Intune manages your configuration, your security, and your compliance, right? So think full Windows settings catalog. I didn't mention this previously, but you can even export, excuse me. You can even export a JSON file, I believe it is, of templates of your existing GPOs, and Intune will evaluate the settings and determine, what maps, what doesn't, what's applicable, what you can do, etc., to help you get as close to your existing Active Directory group policies as you want to be, right? So full settings catalog. You can establish security baselines. So every device that you onboard gets a certain set of security policies. You can elaborate beyond that, but you can also set that baseline. And then with the compliance item, you can use Intune to evaluate the compliant state. You can take it far beyond just a password if you want. Just understand the more complicated your compliance policy becomes, the more likely you're going to get users blocked out of the tenant and you need to take action. So it really becomes a balance of the risks that you can stand with your organization and the functionality dance that you need to do with operations. Together, both of those solutions do offer a seamless, scalable solution for IT teams to be able to deploy and secure their devices in a very consistent manner. Open it up for questions. I definitely don't want to kill you with slides. Please feel free to ask any questions about how Intune and Autopilot might be able to fit in your specific environment, any concerns that you might have. Happy to take those questions. All right, Brian, with that, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. I'll just open up the floor one last time for any questions before we sign off. You can throw them in the Q&A or chat or just voice in if you'd like. Chris, go to the next slide. If you think of any questions after this or rewatching this, here's Chris and Ashley's contact information. Please feel free to reach out at any time. Again, this webinar is being recorded, so I will send the link out to everyone on Monday and share with your teams. And if anyone within your teams has any questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to us as well. Other than that, go ahead, Chris.
Yep, Brian, we did get one more question from Dr. Ramsey. Does our organization support GCC? We are able to support GCC and help you in any transition that you may need. We can also help you map the Intune configuration to your GCC requirements.
Thanks, Chris. You're welcome. So with that, thank you everyone for attending. We hope everyone has a great weekend. And again, I'll send the link out on Monday, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.